Hi guys, before you get into this video, I want you all to know that there is a tonal shift in this video when contrasted to other videos that I've made regarding similar topics. I have made a couple of videos about this topic before, but in this video I'm going to be going in deeper and adding my own personal opinion more than usual, which is going to bring up some personal feelings, and joking about things is the way that I cope. Nothing in particular sparked this video, it's just feelings that I have been mulling over for potentially years. It's only more recent events within my own personal life that have truly made me think about these things, and therefore am now able to verbalize them more eloquently than I could before. I'm not joking directly about the topic matter, but if it still annoys you that there might be a couple of jokes here and there in a video that is surrounding a serious topic matter, then feel free to click off. In some regards, my channel has become one long thought piece on many different topics. I cover many different things from culture to history to psychology, but one constant throughout my entire YouTube journey, and me as a person, is my disdain for things that happen to children. Because it seems we haven't quite decided how best to go about protecting children. That's bizarre, isn't it? We, as a society, don't know exactly how to look after those most vulnerable. I've done a video on good vigilantism, I've done a video on poor representation of vigilantism, but what I haven't talked about is tokenism. Tokenism, not Tolkienism. We aren't talking about the representation of elves here. The definition of tokenism, according to the Oxford Language Dictionary, is the practice of making a perfunctory or symbolic effort to do a particular thing, especially by recruiting a small number of people from underrepresented groups in order to give the appearance of sexual or racial equality within a workforce. So, let's talk about CSA survivors and tokenism, shall we? And by the by, this goes for a lot of different trauma victims. It's not just CSA survivors, it's survivors of a lot of different things. And not one singular YouTuber is particularly guilty of this, or am I directing this video towards. Vigilantism is not a new topic, as you would have seen before in my video on vigilantism, where I give a history of it very briefly. But also, it's been a massive topic, particularly online for the last few years. Within the United Kingdom even, it's been debated as to whether evidence founded by vigilante groups is even permissible in court. That's how big it's gotten. We have actual legal professionals debating this, because it's becoming somewhat of a theme, and some people would say somewhat of a problem. I have touched on several of the things that I'm about to talk about in this video, but I don't feel as if I gave them enough depth. I didn't go into them fully, and I didn't relate them to tokenism. So, here we go. The first thing is, it's interesting that vigilantism has now become a social media phenomenon. We used to chase people out of the village with pitchforks, which honestly sounds a hell of a lot more fun. And now we have the wonders of the internet, the gift that keeps on giving. That was sarcasm. I hate it here. Why am I here? And we don't tend to have as much as a homogeny as we used to. It used to be, that person is a bad person, it's time for a public execution, yay! No, we now have vigilantes with YouTube channels and fan bases. And some of the fans. Jesus. If anything, this is a topic that has become more complicated over time. Usually it's the other way round. Things are complicated and then science happens and we realise it wasn't that complicated to begin with. No, this is a moral issue that is ongoing. Much like the issue in the great debate as to whether Italians are white or not. Although lucky us, we'll probably figure out that great, deep, burning question at least by the year 3000, give or take a few centuries. And why is... Oh my god, what happened to my voice? And why is it a problem? Because some people online will do the most to get attention. I don't really want to talk about any specific cases because it kind of proves the point that if you use serious topics for attention, then you're getting attention for it. Maybe an oldie but goldie would be Logan Paul going into that forest in Japan. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're too young, go away. Come back to this video in a few years' time. Human beings have a tendency to look at things that we really shouldn't. Two girls, one cup, anyone. Schadenfreude is the milder reason why we do this. It's the feeling of joy we get from seeing the misfortune of other people. Don't lie, you've done this before, you've seen someone fall over, you've laughed, That's Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude, people taking pleasure in your pain.
I absolutely promise you that the singing stops now and the jokes will stop shortly when we get into the serious stuff. I've already talked about the problem of manufacturing content to be shocking and entertaining regarding serious topics, so I'm not going to go into it that much. But that's the second reason why there's such a split. What I'm really trying to get at is the support for vigilante channels. Some people will call them heroes for doing God's work. They enjoy watching this kind of thing because it's cathartic, and definitely for people who have experienced CSA or other things similar, it's definitely a valid way of coping. I've also talked about the other side where it can be seen as making fun of or making light of a serious topic, but what I haven't talked about is tokenism. The idea that this topic's being covered because somebody wants to be seen as a virtuous person. And trust me, I know certain vigilante content creators, I know certain vigilante groups, and some of those people have hearts made of gold and absolutely do believe in what they're doing. But sometimes it's also hard to see something that isn't there. That's a hero. What I wanted to go in further detail was the idea of this hero complex. This idol worship that some people have, and I understand why certain people have it. Some of us didn't have heroes. I certainly didn't have one. The only heroes that I had were the doctors, nurses, and psychologists who sat down with me and looked after me, both physically and mentally. But my frustration with this calling somebody a hero is the story seems to end when the culprit is caught. Nobody ever talks about the aftermath. Nobody ever talks about what comes after you've been through something like that. There's the investigation, there's the confrontation, end of video. And it all comes off as very tokenism-y. Is that a word? I don't think that's a word. And that's the problem. You've got your video, you've got the support, but are you helping? It's something that has often bothered me because I know that even in my own recovery immediately after certain events, it was like people don't want to touch you with a 10-foot pole because you represent what happened to you. You're not necessarily somebody who's been through something awful. You're a reminder that terrible people exist, and that's too much for some people. Something that I've recently learned about myself that I am willing to share is that I realized something about myself when I was talking to my therapist recently, and that is, I'm not crazy. I have described myself as a hot-ass mess and psychotic, but looking back, I'm not those things. What has been diagnosed is attachment issues and abandonment issues. So for over a decade, I've been considering myself to be crazy when I'm not. And this is about 10 years after the fact, after I finally was saved. It gave me great pause to find that out about myself. I think in some ways it indirectly reinforces the idea that the physical is the most important. Somebody is no longer in proximity to that danger physically. But what about mentally? And this isn't just an internet issue, it's a real life issue. Many people think, oh well, the case is wrapped up and done, we can all go home for the day and have a nice cup of tea. And that's why I can understand certain dissenters when talking about vigilante creators and groups. Because the concern seems to end when the case does. This has been a really hard video to record because there's so many things that are just going on internally with my own mental clockwork that I don't even know if this made any sense whatsoever. But I think it was important to talk about because I want to advocate more for the support of CSA survivors after the fact. I think that's what this video is about. I think people who create this content and groups who go out and do these things should definitely be more aware of what happens to people. What happens to the CSA survivors? What happens to the family of the undesirable? The innocent people who did nothing wrong. And that's definitely why it can come across as tokenism for some people. And I can totally understand that criticism. And I can agree with that criticism in some cases. I've been a token on and offline for things that have happened to me. CSA survivors fight all the time to be seen as something other than a CSA survivor. Maybe it's counterproductive for me to proclaim myself as one. Maybe I'm part of the problem. Maybe critics and I should be less pessimistic and less jaded and think about the good that's being done. but based on my own experiences, I can't be that optimistic. This was my final puzzle piece in this topic. I really don't think there's anything else that I can talk about. Again, I've talked about bad portrayals of vigilantism, I've talked about good examples of vigilantism, and I really just wanted to focus on survivors in this video. That's who I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk briefly about my own thoughts and feelings on it, and extend some thoughts towards those who may be feeling the same. Maybe it's just me. I don't know if this video made any sense or if I'm just saying things I've said before, but I wanted to put an emphasis on the CSA survivors. That was the most important thing to me, and I really hope I got that across. And hopefully I'll see you in a more fun, upbeat video next time. Bye.